Emerging from the ashes of a slave revolt is a new view of human bondage and its stranglehold on humanity in the 18th century. The island of St. John sparkles in the Caribbean sun like a jewel set in blue crystal. 7 miles long and 3 miles wide, it's part of the Virgin Island chain, a necklace of 8 main islands and 75 islets. A U.S. territory since 1917, 3/5 of the island is a national park. St. John's idyllic coves are havens for the well-heeled and world-weary. But underneath the plush towels and designer beach bags, this is a paradise with a past. Oh no! Flashback to 1733. St. John is rocked by a slave revolt.
But the question is, how does this show up on the landscape?
At a site called Cinnamon Bay, a solid link to a complex struggle has been found. Assisted by local volunteers, archaeologists Douglas Armstrong, Mark Hauser, and Ken Wild uncover the remains of a possible 1733 slave residence. A time warp back to a rumble that shook the Caribbean. A mystery specific to the Cinnamon Bay site has put the team on overtime. Traces of carbon indicate the building that once stood here may have been the target of arsonists. But who were they?
This is where the historian that works in the documentation now needs to interact and work with the archaeologist who can actually look into the ground and confirm the written record. And when we can mingle those two, we've got it now.
This site is no accidental discovery. Archaeologists were guided here by an excavation of another sort. Historian David Knight dug through recently compiled collections of 18th century Danish tax records. Merging the records to the lay of the land, David helped expose a site literally vanished beneath the sands of time.
Scanning and looking for medicinal plant remains from Africa.
Okay, nice.
Ken Wild and Doug Armstrong find traces of local herbs in the ruins of Cinnamon Bay. The evidence supports historical accounts that colonists have begun to rely upon African herbal cures to survive the tropics. Archaeologists find several of these tools at the Cinnamon Bay site.
This is the cane knife found just off the shore at Cinnamon Bay. A cane knife like this, of course, was used for cutting cane. It was used by almost every slave on the island, so it was in everybody's possession.
Over 2 centuries later, a breakthrough of another sort is won by archaeologists at Cinnamon Bay. Artifacts from the site indicate the ruins were indeed a shelter for slaves.
Cowrie shells like this were part of currency in West Africa. They were used in clothing and fasteners and adornment. Finding a piece like this on this site gives a suggestion of people bringing items from Africa into the Caribbean into a site of slave house.
Along with the artifacts, another discovery allows the team to fix the date of the ruins, firmly in the timeline of Caribbean history. Armstrong and company discover a layer of ash covering a floor of mortar, evidence that the structure burned to the ground.
Yeah, I think we're ready for the sample. Let's go straight to the bag.
Samples will be sent off for carbon dating, in hopes of confirming the slave house was destroyed during the revolt. In fact, the ash reveals a burn layer, dated directly from the year 1733. The pattern of charred evidence indicates the compound was deliberately burned. For David Knight, the rebels' story is far from over. A new chapter begins with the chance discovery of an abandoned plantation site, undisturbed since 1733.
We have determined that this site was burned in the slave rebellion.
Got it.
Ken Wild maps the ruins for the National Park Service as a potential dig site in the future. The discovery of a molasses skimming device is a tip-off that the team has found a lost sugarcane plantation.
That's your homemade tool.
Yeah.
As the archaeologists unearth St. John's past, islanders celebrate the birth of the rebellion with an annual trek to the original fort.